Hello, hello. We're 5 minutes late, but that's all right. We'll go ahead and get started. Today we are talking about ego deconditioning and, of course, whatever else comes up between Teresa and I, because that's just what happens on here. I'm not going to lie. Hello, hello, everybody joining us. Hey, Jen. Hey, Sarah. We'll just wait until, oh, there's Teresa. Hey. If there's anything specific that you guys want to talk about as you're hopping on, feel free to drop it in the comments. Also, we'd love to know your type profile authority so we know who we're hanging out with in case anything comes up. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Request or how it's going to work. It's been a while. Today's a new day. Feeling refreshed today. Feeling like a whole new day.
We're going to get back at it.
Feeling like a Monday on a Wednesday.
You know, hump day is great too.
Yeah.
I mean, do we even know what days or time is anymore at this point? Like, I was in work mode on Sunday this week, and I was like, well, I guess I'm just working all day because it's here. The energy's here, so we're doing it.
Yeah. Lots of people hopping on. If you want to drop your type profile authority in the comments, we'd love to know who's hanging out with us today. Hello, hello.
Hey, everybody. We're happy to be back. This feels so good.
I know. I don't know about the rest of everybody, but like everyone else I know in my life has had like a crazy 6 weeks, month, of just what the hell is going on. But it's a really fun time to be in our experiments and to know about our design, that's for sure.
Yeah, you've really been in the ringer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could call it that.
Yeah, well, so have you. We could call it, that this is kind of what prompted this live today with the ego deconditioning, talking about, so if you don't know, Teresa's emotional, I'm sacral, and, in human design, we talk a lot about the importance of being in your own aura and sleeping in your own aura. And it was a yes for me right away. And I made that transition in my life with my projector husband. And I've been talking to Teresa about it for a while, and, she rode her wave and just started doing it. So I was like, let's talk about that ego deconditioning today. And because she's recently started sleeping in her own aura, and there's lots of stuff that comes up outside of just like you don't realize it's connected to the centers until you're like, oh shit, that's ego, or oh shit, that's sacral, So,
Yeah.
and if anybody watching has any input or wants to throw anything in, you're welcome to put whatever you want in the comments and we'll go back through. But yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, so I think like anything else in design, when you make a change in your life in some way, it has to be entered into correctly. So, I'd heard about sleeping separately maybe a year ago, but I really only heard it emphasized for projectors and reflectors. So I just kind of batted it off and I was like, oh, my husband's an emotional MG as well. It's no big deal. We're similar, whatever. But I wasn't thinking about how I have a defined root and a defined spleen. He has a defined ego center. I'm open there. There's a lot about our chart that isn't similar, our charts. So when Brandy said that she had a really great experience with it, I think I met you when you were like 2 months into it or something, and you were just like, I'm never going back.
I hadn't started. I don't think I had started yet. I think I made this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I made the switch around that time, but it was just like we did like a trial run, a few nights trial run, and then it was like he's getting his own bed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. For some reason, I thought you'd been doing it for a while, because I feel like when we first met, that was something that you said was like, oh, sleeping alone has been insane. So maybe it was like the first week or something you had done it.
Pretty close, yeah.
But yeah, so I was like, oh, well, she's an MG. okay, like maybe it's important for us too. And then I started hearing that, I think I was watching a Jonah Dempsey video or something, and he was like, yeah, all the types should sleep alone. And I'm like, why have I only heard this as a thing for projectors and reflectors?
Mhm.
So, yeah, but at the time, it just wasn't physically possible to do it for us. And so I was like, okay, cool. This gives me time to ride my wave anyways about it. And I did for like a few months. And then once we had the room available to do it, we ordered a bed. And so it's been like, what, a month now? I want to say a
Mhm.
month. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the first thing I noticed was like, I've never been somebody that really remembers my dreams. Um, and I have extremely vivid dreams every single night now that I remember. Like it's the craziest experience. I've never been that person before. It would be like maybe once a week or something, or once every other week, I'd have a vivid dream. I'd be like, oh my gosh. But it's every single night now. The other thing I've noticed is it's hard to describe, but I just feel more like myself. I don't, I'm noticing ego, not self thoughts are coming up less and less. Whereas before, I almost feel like they were just pummeling me all day. And that might also be a testament of just continuously following strategy and authority. But it's like I'm so much more chill about being like, I don't have anything to prove, whereas before I almost felt like it was like there was this behind it, there was this behind it all the time, and it was more like hot to the touch. It was more sensitive. And my husband has noticed that he falls asleep much quicker, so I think that might be have something to do with my root definition and him not being in that.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised at how open he was to doing this, because he knows about design, but he's not really, he's receptive, so he's probably picked up a lot more than he thinks he knows about it. But he's not as hardcore as I am, obviously. So at first he was like, okay, yeah, let's try it. Why not? And he was just super open to trying it. And it's been the kind of thing where we almost have to like try harder to connect now, which I think is a good thing, because before you can just kind of get comfortable being like, oh, whatever, we're going to bed now, and good night, whatever. And now it's like we cuddle on the couch, and we'll go into each other's beds in the morning and cuddle, and it's just there's more of this seeking each other out because we miss each other more, but it's not like I miss sleeping with him. I just don't get as much of his frequency, because at night you're getting just pummeled with the frequency, right? So now it's like, oh, I want to be in his aura right now, or maybe I don't want to be in his aura right now because I don't want that ego center energy right now. There's just much more awareness of what my own frequency feels like. And it's so fascinating as I'm talking about this, I'm getting more and more clarity around it. And this is how the solar plexus works. Like these are things that I've never even said or realized before until we're talking about it right now. So it really goes to show how much of a social thing the solar plexus processing is.
Yeah. So I remember one day we were voice messaging each other, and you were like having these like receptive mind, like all these awarenesses, and you were like, oh my gosh, that's all ego. Like, what is I got a couple questions here. It would be, have you noticed your flow, your generator surrender flow? Have you noticed any like softening of that now that you're not like constantly attached to that ego? And have you noticed like what are some of your biggest aha moments specifically to the ego?
Yeah, I've definitely been noticing a lot more softening. And it's funny, I think I was talking to Sarah about this, but the ego almost, it almost makes me lazier when I'm in ego energy. Like, it's almost how I can imagine it would be to have root definition as an open person, because I've heard of defined root people saying that or undefined root people saying that the defined root kind of feels like slow honey to them. It's almost if you're pouring honey out of a jar. Imagine that like slowness, and it kind of drags them down a little bit. And Sarah actually made a really good point when we were talking, and she said, yeah, it almost feels like if you're around a defined ego that doesn't rest, you have to rest for them.
Yeah.
So it's like I'll be feeling into the health of that ego energy. I'm like, oh, this is not a healthy ego. Man, I need to lay down. It's like, and my husband has gotten much better about giving himself time to like cut off and even in the middle of the day, he'll just go lay on the couch and rest, which he never used to do because he also has the 2034. So he's just
Yeah.
go, go, go all the time. But yeah, I thought that was a really good point that Sarah made. It's almost like, okay, I'm slower around this. So I've noticed as he shifts too, my experience of ego energy is shifting because as you guys know, you can be around a defined ego that's very healthy. And I actually, Brandy, like when I'm around you, it doesn't feel like that. Like when we were at the conference and stuff, it
Yeah.
was like, it just felt like our sacral motors were kind of synced up, but I wasn't like, oh, we need to rest. It
Yeah.
was just like,
Yeah.
oh, sacrals are done. But
Yeah.
your ego energy just felt like really healthy to me and just like, okay, I know when I need to rest and I know when I need to go. And so that's been, I would say, my biggest realization is just actually really being able to feel into the health. And instead of taking it on as my own, knowing that I can feel like when a defined ego is feeling insecure about something or when they're feeling tired and they're not resting and they're not giving their heart that space. So yeah, it's been fascinating.
I just had a huge aha moment myself when you were talking.
Yes.
I never connected the dots. So, several of you guys on here probably don't know me personally or follow my personal page, but 2.5 weeks ago, my husband lost his ability to walk on his own and use his hands. It just kind of came out of nowhere, all of that. He has a defined ego. He's 3740 is his only channel, and he like ran off of willpower. And of course, now that he's our life has shifted, so I'm doing a lot more, but I do have to do it from a place of like, I have channel of preservation, I have defined ego, I have sacral, I got the energy to do it. But I do notice now that he's taking care of his willpower at a different level, I have more energy. It's like I'm around a healthy, he's like getting into his healthy ego. Because I would also often wonder like why I was so low-fee when he's just like doing the things. I'm like, I feel like I need to have some sort of motivation. But now I'm just like click, click, click. Unhealthy ego. Even as a defined ego myself, like if I'm around an unhealthy ego, I want to loaf more.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So interesting, right? And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I grew up around ego energy and I think about myself as a kid. And also, I have a right environment arrow, so I tend to like to be in relaxed environments, anyways. But, I just remember being a kid and being like, feeling like I needed to lay down all the time, which is weird for an MG. Like, but every single person in my family is defined ego. And I would say my brother was probably the only healthy one. It was like the only one that I saw resting. My parents, no, they both have undefined roots. Like they don't rest.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah. And same with my husband, undefined root, defined ego. And if they're not correct, but then it's almost like in our own experiments of in our journeys of correctness and just living in our designs, the people around us, just kind of naturally, it's like they either get correct or fall away.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting too. I wonder how your husband is feeling that being around your root energy like during the day. Do you notice that he maybe feels less pressure during the daytime? Are you noticing
Yeah,
that?
and I would say that probably that's that, I'll have to ask him about it, but that's probably his experience with not sleeping in the same bed and him being able to like release that root energy at night now because I have noticed he lays down more throughout the day now. So, but yeah, and Sarah made a good point. The 3740, your husband's 3740,
Your
Brandy,
husband has it too.
and so is mine, and both of my parents are too.
Yeah.
And I believe my brother is too. Apparently, I need to learn a lot about that channel. But yeah, that one, I almost think that one, because it's tribal, it's like, it's so hard for them to shut off. And then when they have the undefined root as well, there's that never ending to-do list going on. And they're like, oh, I need to do all these things like for the tribe. And it's never ending. And I was talking to my mom on the phone yesterday. I think you're so right about how the people around us start to change because she's retired, but she's still a busybody and she's just like doing yard work and doing God knows what all day. And she called me and she's like, oh, I mean, it's only 11 and I already need to lay down. She's also a projector, mind you.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, Mom, you were just working in the yard for like 3 hours in the heat. I live in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like, she's like,
Yeah.
I know, but I just, I guess it's just my body is like gonna shut off. I'm like, yeah, you need to lay down. And the
Yeah.
woman's almost 70 years old and she's finally realizing I need to rest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That ego. It's amazing the ripple effect of you deconditioning your open ego and then the defined egos around you. That frequency shift. It's even things that we can't touch, see, anything like that, or even have words for. It just kind of happens. It's all frequency.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, super fascinating. I wanted to ask you, Brandy, have you had any realizations about like being in a generator projector relationship over the past couple of weeks? Because
Oh,
I know Ross said that can be a really difficult, like intimate relationship to have is that combo. So what's come through for you over the last couple weeks?
um. Well, for me personally, in my experiment, I've really noticed what gives me life, what lights me up. And I'm really seeing that channel of preservation and what actually lights it up versus what I just was like robotically doing or just doing from a space of like not self, taking care of fixing things and stuff, and really like surrendering into a place of what is a sacred yes for me to nourish, to take care of, to be responsible for. What can I let go of? And surrendering into like the things that I can let go of that I don't have the capacity for. The more and more that I do that for myself, I'm blown away with how much more energy I have. It's
Yeah.
it's wild. But the generator projector relationship is really being tested right now because my projector husband is forced to rest. You know, I've been talking to him about rest for a long time. Like I said earlier, he just runs on willpower. Um, and I'm not responsible for him living in his design. I can do what I'm doing, and then if he chooses to, that's his choice. But he's really starting to see the areas of his life where he's emotional authority. Maybe he wasn't following his authority, or even allowing himself to feel it or to have awareness of it. But yeah, it's really interesting right now because it's like we're getting a reset. I'm an MG. I can do a lot of stuff. I'm pretty lit up, pretty defined, lots of energy. And he's not, I mean, he is an energy projector, but when is it correct for him? What does he have the willpower for? What is correct for him and his after he rides this emotional wave? So we get this reset period where we can kind of like, as he starts getting better and rehabilitating, he gets to see what is correct for him, what isn't. So it's a huge blessing, actually, um, to see. We had some stuff come up yesterday about him feeling like banished, basically, by sleeping separately. His bedroom is in our basement. It's finished, but it's in the basement, and that's also where his office is. And so he's like banished to the basement. So how can I reassure and recognize him, still give him recognition for being part of our family with that 3740? That's important. And like, yeah, just all these things about how we can honor each other and honor ourselves, but we're really thrown into it. I mean, one day he wakes up and can't do anything for himself. And so it's like, okay, reset, you know? And I think
Wow.
he's going to have a huge appreciation of the awarenesses that he's gaining around his design. I talk about design with him around this topic when he wants to. I ask him or invite him into conversation if he wants to or not. But he's receptive mind as well. So he's picked up a lot about design over time. And he's just kind of like, oh, like seeing how everything kind of clicks into place and how he can still be that provider, that taking action in our family and stuff without having to like overdo it with his ego.
Mm.
So
Wow. I mean, it's
yeah,
not the way that we ever want to learn
right,
lessons, but
right.
I find that a lot of us need, like, I call it the smack a tree moment, where we just have to get whacked by earth, by life, you know, by the universe, in order to learn. It almost like smacks you into alignment, right? It's just like whoosh, like you have no other choice. And you know, just talking to you over the last few weeks, it seems like almost like every day there's kind of a new realization for him, or he's getting more clarity. And it's really a testament to how that emotional energy, just how it works, and how he needs you to help him process it. And
Yeah.
with all of the heavy things that are coming up, but he has no choice but to just kind of sit there and feel it and
Yeah.
experience what's coming up around that.
Yeah. And we've even talked about, I talked to you a little bit about this, but we talked about our motivations. And, you know, there's things that you can ignore or not look at for long enough to when, and then something, like you said, smacks you in the face with it. And looking at our motivations, I'm hope motivation, he's guilt. I'm the one that was taking action all the time in our relationship dynamic, you know? And, you know, in other realms, you could call that feminine, masculine energy, whatever. But it was really this like come to Jesus talk that we had. Like, we got, you know, correctness. I'm gonna live correctly. I want to live correctly. I'm gonna follow my sacral. I'm gonna be in my experiment, and I'd like you to be along with the ride. I'm not gonna, I don't get to choose if you're along the ride with me or not. But the awareness is important. And that guilt motivation, when you're guilt motivation and you're hanging out in hope like 99% of the time, nothing, you know, doesn't matter. You're not correct and not following authority. I mean, there's so many layers to it. And you could get all lost in the sauce with that, but ultimately it just comes down to strategy and authority. And he, you know, him being a projector, recognizing what he's entered into without invitation, and what he's just hanging out, you know, letting other people, letting me as a sacral, like you reminded me of this, our relationship is emotional because he's emotional authority. I have to wait for him to have, you know, ride his wave and gain some clarity. And before, I was just like sacraling through our life, you know, and I think he's got that wake up call of like, oh, you know, I need to take action in my own design, or, you know, can't let my wife just make all the decisions and I don't want to. So then I'm not correct.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine that'd be really hard, like being somebody who moves. Yeah, like being somebody who moves as fast as you do. And then it's almost like it can feel like there's this extra weight on you sometimes when there's that emotional energy that's like, nope. But I guess you can also just look at it as the design of your relationship is
Yeah.
emotional. And
Yeah.
so any decisions that impact both of you need to be made at the emotional pace.
Yeah.
And especially when it's things that he needs to do for his body and those kinds of things, you know, and I can really sympathize with you being like, well, this is impacting my life a lot. So this also includes me, like what you put in your body and what you do to your body also, like I kind of have a say in it because this is
Yeah.
impacting me.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that being really challenging. And it's almost like at first when all of this happened, it felt like you were just in survival mode. Like we just
Totally.
need to like figure this out. We need to go. And now it almost seems like you're a lot more relaxed into it. And you're like, yeah, this kind of sucks, but you know, we're dealing with it and we're just moving forward, and you have your ups and you have your downs. And it seems like you're really experiencing like that emotional wave with him as you guys go through it.
Yeah. And it's been really great. I have lots of friends in the human design community, and Jen, the joyful projector, and I were having a conversation, and she reminded me about like the ways that the different binaries respond to different medicine. You know, oh, there she is. Oh, wait, no, it's joyfully human. I saw joy in it. So, like, ajna binary, energy medicine, you know, solar plexus binary, rest, splenic binary, Western medicine, medication, you know, that type of thing. So there's so much in the chart that like we don't need to know it all, right? But at the same time, I'm knowing those things and understanding those things. So my husband's ajna binary, the things that he's doing to see improvements are all in the energy realm. As far as frequency, he's getting frequency microcurrent treatments. He's responding well to Reiki, to homeopathy, which is frequency, you know, all of these energy types of medicine. And we started doing that before I remembered that he was Ajna binary, and that energy medicine goes with that. So following strategy and authority, him following strategy and authority, and me following strategy and authority and what his treatments are already led us more towards the energy medicine, you know?
Wow.
But then having that layer of like, oh yeah, no, that is actually correct for him. He's Ajna binary. And I was like, oh shit, that's
Yeah.
cool. You
And he
know,
has
no
an
wonder,
undefined spleen.
right. No wonder he was not responding to anything in the hospital and all the tests were normal and, you know, all of that stuff. And it's like, because he's not supposed to be, it's not correct for him to be treated that way.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Fascinating. That reminds me of the episode of Human Design Collective podcast with Martin Grass Sr.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you guys haven't listened to that episode, that's like one of my favorite ones that they've done.
If
He's,
you've never watched or if you've never listened to them, go find them on
yeah,
Spotify. Human Design
so
Collective.
good. I feel like we're just like Human Design Collective poster children. Just like, everybody, go, go, go.
I mean, they're just two amazing projectors.
Right? I sent their
Yeah.
blog to so many people yesterday. It's just like, here, you want to learn about the arrows, read this blog. Super grateful for them. But yeah, that episode was really good. And he talked a lot about how I think I don't know if he does homeopathy or, you know, what it is, but he talked a lot about how we need to be making these decisions through strategy and authority. And even like PHS doesn't solve everything. You know, a lot of people in design think that, oh, I just do my PHS and everything in my body's gonna be great. And that's just not the case. So
Yeah. And speaking of PHS, we had a conversation about he's indirect, right? And, or not PHS, yeah, his environment, but, or my brain. Yeah. Anyways,
determination.
determination is my problem. That's my brain right now. That's your brain on stress hormones. But he's indirect, and we would notice that at night he would start to get more anxious when he had to go to bed. And he's like, I don't know if I can go to bed. And, and then the other day in the car, I was like, you can't work because you can't type. You don't have to go to sleep at night. You can sleep whenever you want to. You know, here's your time that you can just see what feels right for you. Stay up late if you want to, sleep in. You don't have to get up and like answer to somebody right away. You don't have to go to bed at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. If you want to stay up till 3 or 4, if you feel alive at night, feel alive at night. If you want to sleep during the day, sleep during the day. He has been sleeping a lot during the day, taking lots of naps and things, but just like the permission to really experiment with his design as a projector, with an indirect, you know, all these things. And I'm like, this is a fucking blessing. You know?
Truly. I mean, that's what,
From a human design standpoint, I'd be like, if you get a reset to just smack dab live your design, this is an awesome way to do it.
yeah, I mean, that's what we were talking about the other day. You were like, this is what I've been wanting. This wasn't how I thought it would happen. But I think that's where, you know, I think we talk about this a lot, but how manifestation culture kind of promotes us wanting to control everything and how it happens, and design actually encourages you to surrender and let go. And it's kind of one of those things of who came first, the chicken or the egg. You could want something or desire something because it's on your path and you're already feeling into it and you just don't realize that, but you don't know how it's going to happen. And so
Right.
as I would imagine, as somebody who's a hope motivation, you're just like, well, you know, I'm surrendered. I'm just hoping that he's going to figure it out eventually. And then boom.
Right, because it's not like I wasn't swinging over the pendulum to guilt to try to get him to take, I was taking action to try to get him to take action to do something. And I even remember a couple months ago being like, bro, if you don't slow down, something is going to take you out and your body's not going to be able to move forward. And that's literally what happened. And I'm like, oh. And I'm
He
like,
just went through
like,
his,
is that feeling cognition just going out and touching the future?
I mean, yeah, it is. That's how the solar plexus works. But he also just went through his Uranus opposition,
He's
right?
going, yeah, yep.
Or he's going through it right now. Fascinating. Well,
Yeah,
that kind of
42 and 7-year cycles. Yeah.
yeah. Cassidy is asking about guilt motivation. Can we explain how it works? Do you want to explain that, Brandy?
From for me, it's really simple. It's just like, because I'm hope. So it's just like the way far opposite of hope. It's just like, it's taking action, you know. For my husband, I try to like nudge him to like, hey, shouldn't you care about that? Shouldn't you want to like do something about that? Like, don't you feel like guilty if you don't, you know? Or like that you need to? And he would just be chilling in hope. So it's just more of like, for me, the exact opposite of hope. The
Yeah.
exact opposite of waiting, hoping that things will do what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like what I noticed with guilt motivation, because I get a lot of guilt motivation clients. I don't know if it's just like fifth line, there's a resonance with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, guilt is like,
Yeah.
what action can you take? And if you're guilt motivation, the correct people in your life will be asking you, well, what action can you take? You know,
Yeah.
like in Brandy's example, okay, he's having a health issue. Her being like, okay, what can you do? Like, do you need to go do this? Do you need to go do that? You know, and just giving his solar plexus data to sit
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And definitely, I would say for projectors, especially, motivation is a really helpful signpost because they don't have that sacral yes, no within them, but they can tell when they're in transference, when they're
Yeah.
not like they're literally seeing the world through a distorted lens when they're in transference. And I feel like from what I've observed with you guys, when he's in hope, it almost feels like put upon. It just feels like, woe is me. When are things ever going to get? But it's not empowering for him. He doesn't seem like he's in his power at all. When for you, when I see you in hope, it's like, oh, cool, she's surrendering.
Yeah.
She's trusting. She's seeing the probability of the outcome of this and just knowing that she can surrender. It's a totally different frequency.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And two, I want to touch on, since we're talking about the ego, you know, it's like rapid deconditioning for a defined ego to just have to stop, you know, just like it probably felt really disruptive to your system, you know, all of a sudden one day when you're like, oh, my open ego, I'm not in aura with my defined ego husband every night, you know, it's like boom, 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 all these things come up. So, and it feels like the same with defined ego and deconditioning the defined ego, for him just having to stop. And then it's like, oh, all this stuff, holy cow.
Oh yeah, and deconditioning his undefined sacral as a projector. I don't like, to me when I was around him, I'm like, he definitely hasn't deconditioned his sacral center. There's
Well,
still that like
when we were all around him, we were 3 mgs.
so he's like super MG. It's just like
We're just sitting and he's like
yeah, and it's almost like there wasn't the awareness around it. So, and I could see you trying to give him that awareness, being like, hey, see how we're all laying on the couch right now? Do you want to lay down with us?
you want to just stop moving.
Just chill.
Yeah. And I think too, with the ego, you know, being a defined ego as a child for him, you know, that frequency of it, his parents are like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And they see that he, you know, you can do. And right now he's having the deconditioning of that because he's realizing like, oh, there's a whole segment of people in my life that only reach out to me because I can do something for them.
As the guilt motivation projector, right? With the, yeah.
And they're not reaching out when he can't do anything for them. You know,
wow.
It's during a time where support is needed. It's just like, hey, that's interesting, you know. So when people see that, you know, they feel that frequency of the defined heart, oh, you can do this for me, or you make me feel this way, or da 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 da. And then that's taken away. It's like they just disappear.
Yeah, and the second line projections.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a shattering, man. Like,
yeah.
You know, I was talking to you that day he was realizing that, and I was just like, it made me so emotional because I was just putting myself in his shoes and like, wow, I just can't imagine having a health issue like that and the people that are supposed to love you the most, you know, aren't even checking in and seeing how you're doing because you can't do anything for them. You know, you're not of service to them. So,
Yeah.
wow. And him just being like purely tribal, like that's, especially with that 3740, that is the part seeking the whole, right? You want to feel like you're a part of something, but hopefully this experience has showed who his tribe really is and who his people really are.
Yeah. And both are in the third line on his chart. So yeah. That's a whole, there's a whole thing.
Trial and error.
Yeah. I mean, see if
Yeah.
you missed questions even.
I feel like with the defined heart too, it's like learning how to make commitments that you actually are entering into correctly, because the defined heart, if it makes a commitment, it's like, I have to follow through with this, you know? But if you didn't enter into that commitment with your authority and you entered into it with your willpower, when you're not an ego projector, an ego manifester, that's not correct for you. So, and I think that's where my open ego can really feel, oh, who's actually going to deliver their promises? Who's capable of committing? I can feel people's like level of commitment. Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So let me ask you this. Have you noticed a difference in your authority by having this big ego deconditioning by sleeping in your own aura?
Oh my God, my authority is so much louder now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just like, and it's just a mechanical, automatic thing at this point, which is really where the mind can come in and help you in your deconditioning once it's on board. Is like, oh, are you going to commit to doing that thing right away? Are you going to commit to that right away? And then solar plexus is like, no. I need time. You know, even with my business coach, she's brilliant. She's always giving me things to respond to. And so it's kind of like I just have this list that I'm riding my wave about. It's like, okay, here's all these things that I can feel into. And before, even like a year ago, she would have given me something to respond to, and I'd be like, boom, I'm gonna go implement that right away. Big changes in my business, you know? And now it's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, I'm just gonna sit on that for as long as it takes. And I can really see how the longer I sit with it, the more it just feels so much better not to make promises that I can't keep, and to have that awareness to enter into things that I can stop doing whenever my authority alerts me that I need to stop doing it, right? Or something comes in to respond because really ultimately we quit things in response as well, right? So but yeah, and like just making changes and transitions, I've noticed life just feels slower to me. And even though I'm not technically doing anything more than I was doing before, life feels slower to me now. It felt before like I had the nitrous oxide taped onto me at all times, and now I'm just like, oh no, like it's cool to go slow.
So do you feel like do you notice any difference in your emotional lows with your ego being deconditioned a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I would say because I don't have that extra wave layer now that I'm like feeling all the time. Since he has the 3740, they feel faster, to be honest. They feel, and even though I do have the 659, and sometimes that one can go at its own slower pace, I have the 3955 and the 1222. So lately, like the last few days especially, it's just been like random bouts of emotional expression, like, oh, I just need to cry, and then 10 minutes later I'm like, cool, totally different person, you know. The other night I was doing something on my computer, and I'd been feeling for like an hour, I could feel the emotional energy building, and then of course my mind tries to find things that I'm upset about, right? So I start doing something on the computer that was like making me emotional, and I'm like, this is why I'm feeling upset, you know. My husband comes in and he's like, I'm gonna order dinner, what do you want? And I was like, I cannot handle this right now. Just snap at him about dinner. I was just like, I'm in a low. Like, I need to finish what I'm doing. And, you know, I'm noticing my mind trying to attach all the reasons for feeling these super intense emotions. And then I just was like, hold up, like, you need to cry. I just cried, and literally I come outside, I'm like, cool, what'd you order? Like there's no problem. So it's almost, I posted this meme the other day that was like, y'all just let me be dramatic for 10 minutes. I'll be done soon. That's
Yeah.
honestly how my waves feel lately. They're not this like low, broody, hours and hours of energy, like slow emotional energy, which there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure every once in a while I'll still have a day like that. But before it was just feeling like that all the freaking time. So I think that's impacting me a lot.
Yeah. I think we don't realize, like we look at our definition and then we don't, I mean, yeah, we know that we have not self themes everywhere, blah, 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 and our open, undefined centers, all of that stuff. But to truly go through a deconditioning process of those centers when they have such impact on your design, especially you were sleeping next to defined ego with 3744, that's an emotional wave, and how that how it all kind of goes together and how you can hear your authority clearer by being in your own aura while you're sleeping.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I highly recommend it to anybody who's on the fence about it because again, it has to be one of those things I've given it to clients to respond to and they're like, "Yeah, I'm not ready." I'm like, "Yeah, listen to your authority because that's how I felt when it first came into my field. I was like, no, it just almost, we're so conditioned to think that as a couple, you need to sleep in the same bed. And so it seems super radical and it almost seems like your roommates or something if you don't
Yeah.
sleep in the same bed. But I've actually found the opposite to be true. It's like, I
Yep.
feel like him and I feel much more connected than we used to. And it almost feels like we're our own people now and we're not just like, the same person. Like even in his family jokes around and calls us Tomisa because his name's Thomas and my name's Teresa. And I'm like, we're our own people. Like I know it's a joke, but at the same time, it actually feels like we're our own people now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that too. I had this instant awareness when we started sleeping separately of how much more energy I had during the day. I didn't realize that his solar sleeping next to a defined solar plexus for me was like I could just it was like I could not clear that out. It was so gunked up.
mm-hmm.
And I was going from needing 10 hours of sleep and then I would wake up in the morning groggy, like I didn't sleep. I would be in this like in between dreamland. I mean, I thought I was sleeping deep, but I wasn't ever getting that deep rest, that healing, restorative sleep. And then the first night that we slept separately, I was like, oh. And then the second day, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I only need 8 hours of sleep. And it's been like that since. I need 8 hours. I sleep incredibly, and I'm just like, wow, what a difference that makes for me having undefined solar plexus. Because I have so many gates coming off my solar plexus anyway, but sleeping next to his defined solar plexus, I'm like, I can feel your emotions all night long. And I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
cognition. So it was like, and intimacy is better, connection's better, because at night it was like, good night, get your emotions away from me,
Yes.
or he'd be laying in bed, I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, what? I'm like, there's something that you're not, I feel like something's not processing, or it'd be like instead. And now it's different. It's a lot different. It's like, hey,
Yes.
want to go to your room tonight? Want to go to my room?
Yeah.
And we have our own spaces. I mean, just in like the humanness of it all, like my bedroom, what I realized when we shared a room was like it was my room that he slept in because I put what I want on the walls. And then now we have our own spaces that reflect our own selves. Like you said, we get to be our own individual selves. We're not homogenized in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's where relationship deconditioning is so important. And especially if you've been together a long time, you almost like identify as one unit. But it's like, although we have a relationship design, we are unique beings and you need that time to yourself. Like sleep is sacred,
Yeah.
truly, truly sacred.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you haven't experimented with it, try it. You don't have to do it every night. Some people just do it a couple nights a week. There are times where it's like, we'll be going to sleep, and I'm like, oh, let's sleep together. I want to like snuggle. And then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, we're never doing that again.
So you know what? I was listening to Ra's lecture about like the generator transformation, and he said that the generator aura is actually like the most sensitive aura, and it's porous, and it's literally taking in everything on all angles, whereas the projector aura is more focused, right? So it almost has that built-in kind of protection because it's only taking in what it's focusing on in that way. But the generator aura is like just taking everything in. And he said, if you're a generator and you sleep in the same bed as a projector, imagine them just like focusing in on you all night. And he actually emphasized generators sleeping alone like more than I'd ever heard it, right? And so I had this whole realization listening to that, just hearing about the quality of the generator aura and why it's so important, because you're just taking so much in.
It's truly life-changing. I mean, it makes me think about when I co-slept with my son, who's an emotional generator, and we would get good sleep, but we would have to sleep for like 11 hours. You know, I would just sleep where he could access my boob, and we would just sleep, you know, and then I'd be like, I needed so much sleep, but you know, his solar plexus and all of that, I'm just like, dang, it like literally impacts everything.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the solar plexus. I don't know what I was listening to. I listened to so much human design shit, it all blends in. But they were talking about the physical function of the solar plexus and how it's like connected to the kidneys and the lungs. And so it's detoxifying. And when you're going through those waves, it's literally detoxifying the body. And so you imagine somebody with an undefined solar plexus in that same space, it's almost like you're feeling them detoxifying, and it's almost like you have to detoxify from that. So interesting. I really, that helped me have such a more like a appreciation for the solar plexus, just knowing, oh, every time I cry, like I'm releasing, I'm detoxifying, it's filtering, you know. And it has to do with like just moving through things in a wave-like function. Fascinating.
Yeah, I think Carla says I need to get my husband on this program. Yeah, well, I mean, here's some perks, like better sex, because you're not like repelled by, well, you know, it's almost like, you know, our aura can kind of close as an MG. And it was like, I was trying to close my aura at night, and like sleeping in a pool of like not self and emotions of others. But seriously, because I can be more me and he can be more him. I mean, he has a lot of, you know, wounds around the sleeping separately, you know, feeling, like I said, banished or abandoned and things like that. But ultimately, we're both makes me happier. Happy wife, happy life. I don't know. Like, I have a defined SP in here.
Yeah. Well, and also
defined spleen. He wakes up cranky. I wake up unrested. Yeah.
Yeah, the spleen thing's interesting because you'd almost think, well, at least I've heard this with some people, like they want to be, if they're undefined, they want to be around the spleen energy, which might be something that he's having trouble with, because the spleen feels like that warm blanket. And then you're like, nope, I don't want to be with you at night.
Yeah.
But that's interesting, Carla, that you're having that experience.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own unique experiences.
Yeah, and that's why, like, just experimenting with it. Like, you don't have to go out and get your own bedrooms, but like, even if you're the one, you know, whose idea, if it's a yes for you to try, be like, I'll be the one that sleeps on the couch and try this, you know, just want to see how I feel, and then naturally maybe they'll see how they feel. But yeah, it's me and my partner are both undefined SP, but defined in our connection chart. How does that work for sleeping?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have a defined ESP while you're in each other's auras. But the whole point in sleeping separate is to be completely in your own aura, because when we're sleeping, we actually change. And I'm not an expert on dream wave analysis by any means, but from what I know, we actually change into a different type when we're sleeping. And when we're sleeping is when we're the most sensitive to the neutrino stream and the conditioning of somebody else's field. So you just want to be totally in your own aura so that, you know, you're only having to deal with the dream world neutrino stream and not your partner's shit as well. Like dream analysis is so crazy. You can be, depending on your chart, you can be the person that has like experiences other people's thoughts while you're dreaming. Like people who are awake on the other side of the world, you're experiencing their thoughts in your dream. So it's not even your own consciousness that you're experiencing. And that's why your dreams can seem so random sometimes, like it has nothing to do with your life and your experiences. But yeah, just to let you know how sensitive we are when we're sleeping.
Well,
It's fascinating.
when we were in Santa Fe, so also I have an undefined solar plexus, and Teresa and I shared a room. We had beds that we weren't 6 feet apart as far as our auras were overlapping a little bit. But it was easier for me to sleep in the same, like in aura with her. I did take one night where I slept on the couch just for a little break, but being around a correct solar plexus, a healthy solar plexus versus one that is not. There was a big difference. I still felt refreshed, but there was just a little part of me that was like, be in your own aura one night.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a big difference. So if each person's living in their design, you might not notice such a huge difference. I don't know. It's all an experiment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's as the undefined solar plexus, that's really what you're feeling into is the health of people's emotional center. So I would think that one that's like, because you know I express and I release and I feel my shit and I cry. I would think one that's moving its energy through consistently would feel better for you to be around
Yep.
in that capacity. Kind of like how I felt with your ego as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think we might be getting kicked off soon. Does anybody have any
yeah.
last minute questions or comments before we get off? Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, I've missed doing this. I'm excited to hopefully do it more when you have capacity
I think
in your crazy world.
somebody made a comment about us being 9-0. Oh, there it is. You are the sweetest 9-0. And thanks for the podcast recommendations. Yeah, Teresa and I are 9-0, so we have to have awareness of that.
Yeah, that's another thing. If you're in relationship with anybody and you're 9-0, which means your charts completely fill in each other's centers, then you have a tendency to be in your own little bubble, especially in social situations. You're just kind of like snickering and whispering back and forth. When we were at the conference, we had to like separate ourselves to meet people, or else we were just like immersed in each other. Because if you think about it, you're not looking for anything else. You're like, oh, I'm complete around this person. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I posted a funny meme today on my stories. It was like, I don't need a partner in crime. I just need a partner to go run errands with me. And I was like, split death problems.
Oh my
I
god.
would love to have someone come with me everywhere.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love running errands, so you know.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, Sarah said something to me the other day. She'll just message me and be like, I'm triggered, I need to process this, you know, and she's like, oh, it just makes so much sense with my like split definition. It's almost like I can't process it unless I have you or somebody to help me. And so it's really interesting. I'm learning so much about relationships through split definition friends, because my husband is single definition as well. So I'm like, I need the split defs to teach me stuff.
You guys are just like content.
Yeah. We're just like, I'm chilling. Oh shit, I got to be aware of this stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, my friends, good to see everybody.
Yeah. We receive more programming when we are asleep than when we are awake. Yep.
That's why it's so important. So importante. All right, my dears, we'll have a really good rest of your day. We will see you next time.
Thank you. See you
Bye.
later.